thank each and every one of you for your participation in this worship service. We thank our ministry of music and all that they do, and to each and every one of you, all our guests that are present. There is a word today. In Malachi, as the scripture was read, Malachi 3, starting at this 6:2 through 12. I want us to look at verse 9. Verse 9 says, "Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. For ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation." We're going to talk on the subject, reverse the curse. Reverse the curse. It is terrible and tragic to have access to a blessing, and yet you are blocked by your curse. For it is true that countless individuals who call themselves Christians live a seemingly perfect picture existence that appears to be marked by blessings, joy, pleasures, and grace gifts. But in reality, from God's perspective, the words promise and eternal points of view, they are strife, held back, and handcuffed by misery or their curse. Recently, I read a story of a man who stole an enormous amount of money, but was captured by the authorities in the process of the robbery. He didn't have the money with him, and so in the questioning query, they asked him, where did he hide the money? However, turned out that the man didn't speak English, he spoke another language. And so the authorities brought in an interpreter. When the interpreter came, the authorities asked him where did he hide the money. The interpreter asked the thief the question in his own language, and the thief replied. The authorities asked, what did he say? The interpreter replied, he's not telling. The authorities insisted, shouting, tell him we want to know where the money is, and we want to know it now. The interpreter repeated the question to the thief, and the same reply. He said he was not telling. The chief head of authority thought that he would try scaring the thief into telling, and so he told the interpreter, tell him that if he doesn't tell us where the money is, we are going to kill his family and blow his brains out. The interpreter repeated the threat to the thief, who became frightened and told the interpreter step by step exactly where he could find the money. The authorities listened to the conversation and then asked the interpreter, well, what did he say? And to which the interpreter replied, he said that he isn't going to tell you anything. Eventually, a feeling of intense irritation, and the authorities convicted the thief while the interpreter found the money and became an inheritor of great wealth. And when I read the story about the authority and the interpreter and the thief, I thought about the fact that most of us would look upon that interpreter with disgust, disdain, and repulsion. However, I believe that we do the very same thing every day in our lives. I also about the fact that the very thing that stands between the authority and the believer and the wealth of God is the faculty in interpretation of the holy word of God and our thief and robber mentality. Okay. And as it's through that thieverish mentality and the faulty interpretation that robs the believer of possessing wealth and blessings of God in our lives. Why, Pastor? Why? Because we have settled for selling ourselves short, blocking our blessings, and are content with our curse. Well, what I'm suggesting in a real sense is that when it comes to the issue of money and stewardship and giving an increase, our interpretations and motives often become mixed up with our human limitations, spiritual short-sightedness, and ultimately a lack of faith to take God at his word. And within, we develop and construct this satanic idealism in our brain that says that all of our money and everything that we possess is solely for our ungodly motives, selfish gain, and our fleshy, carnal ambition. but according to the biblical order of God. God blesses those who do it his way, and he curses those who refuse to follow his plan, flowing in his purpose and walking in their inheritance. It is terrible and a tragic situation to have access to your blessing, yet you are blocked by your curse. And there are countless people who call themselves Christians, who come to church Sunday after Sunday, looking and smelling good, who have settled for selling themselves short, blocking their own blessing, and are content with continually living with their curse. Making a living, but because of their disobedience, the curse is forbidding them to make a life. Living and dressing and driving good cars, but one day you will find yourself a day late and $1 short with your stuff because you refuse to honor God with all that you have. You have a good job. You live in a nice house, but you seem to not make ends meet because the Lord has cursed your 90%. For a continual refusing of your faith to give him 10% that he asked for. And even though it's be justified in asking for it, I've come to push, and I've come to always have to push and encourage, exalt somebody about your tomorrow can be brighter and your yesterday, for your destiny can be greater than your history. Your dreams can be fonder than your memories. If you let God speak to your heart today, the curse can be reversed. Amen. The curse can be broken in your life forever. God desires for you to move him from being your last result to him being your first priority. And if it's the will of God that you move the word of God from being your spare tire, he wants you to make him your steering wheel. And that is where we are in the story. In our story at the time of the text, it's about 100 years have passed since God has set Israel free from their Babylonian captivity. It was approximately a century since God used the pagan king to overthrow the Babylonian empire. He set the Jewish people free and ordered them to go to a home and build God's holy city in Jerusalem. This was about a century later. The first days back home were marked by spiritual renewal and a blessing and a spiritual revival. It was a refreshing revival. The temple was now restored. The city walls were rebuilt and the people's heart were revived. However, long after being home, not long after the revival had broke out, not long after God has done as much as he could, the Israelites fell one more into a cold and callous religiosity. And the fire of revival began to phase out, and it began to cool off. And once again, the Israelites began to turn their hearts away from God of Yahweh and began to do it their way. Now the Bible is clear in Psalms 103 and 8 that God says he's slow to anger. But if you are slow to do right, his anger will eventually catch up to you. And when God sees the people have yet once more, have for yet another generation, proven themselves to diss God and do it their way, God's patience is worn, and he decides that to give Israel one more chance. One more chance. And the one more chance is extended through the prophet and the prophecy of Malachi. But take note here, the prophecy of Malachi is not just the last call for Israel spiritually, but also historically. Chronological, the book of Malachi is the last of the Old Testament. And that is not accidental. When you finish the book of Malachi, you flip over and you find yourself in the New Testament of Matthew. For consequently, from the end of Malachi to the beginning of Matthew, there is about a 400 years that there was not a voice heard from the prophet. That is as if Malachi speaks, and through their disobedience, God just shuts up. and not doing nothing to save Israel. But God just stopped talking to Israel for over 400 years. And the next time a prophet is heard, it's about 400 years later. God raised up John the Baptist as the forerunner for the Messiah. And the coming of the Messiah revealed that God is no longer counting on Israel to do what is right. When the Messiah comes, he shuts the door on calling Israel the chosen and the promised people of God. And when the Messiah comes, he opens the door and the floodgates for a strange group of people that the Bible calls whosoever will. And before the Messiah comes, and before he shuts the mouth, God, through his grace, gives Israel just one more chance. In fact, there is just a bottom line to the story of Malachi. And here it is: stop playing church before it's too late. Why? Because it's one thing to come to church, but it's another thing to be the church. It's one thing to worship, but it's another thing to have worship go through you. It's one thing to boast and brag about how the Lord has been working on you, but it's another thing to reach the point where the Lord is working in you, through you, to work on somebody else. It's one thing to come to church, to sit, to look, sleep, and then make your exit. It's another thing when your mind has been renewed, your soul has been redeemed, your commitment has been reaffirmed. When every day of your life, the Spirit of God is using the Word of God to make you look more like the Son of God. Where there is a changing and a rearranging of your priorities in God, there's a recharging in your commitment before God. You see verses 6 through 9. It tells us the dangers of being disobedient. It says rebellion. You have gone away from me. But I like what verse 7 says. Verse 7 says, gone away. That means to neglect, to hide, to remove, to restrain. And then he talks about the ordinances, that which is limited, set apart, and boundaries. Your actions have abandoned your identity. Your call has departed from what he's called you to and destined you for. Your carnal and fleshly desires have pleased yourself, have neglected the worship that I have desired for you to be set apart in me, in your heart. It says rob. It says robbery in verse 8. You have robbed me. There is a difference between a thief and a robber. You see, a thief waits until you walk away and looks around, not looking around, and then he steals what you have stuck. But a robber takes a gun, and he takes a knife, and he takes a weapon, and he stands in your face and takes what you have by force. God didn't say that you are thieves. He said that you are robbers. That's not embezzlement, but it's carjacking. There's a tension between God and Israel is so hard-hearted and stiff-necked that they can't even recognize that their sin is causing separation with God. It's all in the Bible. They think that the reason there is tension is because some inconsistencies and unfaithfulness on God's part. And so God clears them up. He clears it in verse 6 when he says, I am the Lord. He lets them know, I am the Lord, I am not changing. In other words, he does not change. He does not change like the shifting shadow. Hebrews 11 says God is eternal, consistent. He does not change. And what that means is that God does not seem distant and far away. Guess who moved? But God says in the text, let me tell you what the real issue is. You need to return to me. Watch the hard-hearted Israelites in verse 7. Return in which way? You see that in the text. The Israelites return, don't even know that they have left God. Return in which way? I like the way Malachi gives a rhetorical question to add attention to the text. They are asking return. Malachi in 2:17 says, you are making God weary. Making him weary in what way? They are playing the hokey dokey and acting brand new, like they don't know where Malachi is coming from. Like a whole lot of us. because in our minds we don't have a problem. But the Bible says you robbed God. You've robbed the church. You've robbed yourself. You see, the average Christian is not honoring God with their giving. I know when I talk about giving, you don't want to hear about that. But 4 years in this church, I haven't talked about giving. We have a lot of people that have not committed themselves to the study of the Word. Won't come to Bible study. Won't frequent Sunday school. But when it comes to the issues of giving, they become theologians and make their excuses as to why they're not giving and cannot give like God demands. But when we are disobedient, here's our favorite theological premises, is that we say that God understands. It's been a long month. I've got bills to pay. I've got a large family, overwhelmed with debt. I got goals to reach. God understands. But I don't know, because God gave you what you started with. And because of your mismanagement of the 90% in your finances, it ain't God's fault that when you don't have anything left at the end to give them in return, someone got to give. I said something has got to give. And when it comes to mistakes you made and the blessings from Him you need and can't live without, you can't afford not to give back to God what He's graciously given you in the beginning. I'm afraid that God does not understand when we don't give what we ought to give to God. He doesn't understand that. And the reality of my not giving back to Him is perceived as spiritual robbery. And because of spiritual robbery, the results are that you are cursed with a curse. Let me give you an illustration. The Discovery Show, entitled It Takes a Thief. It says that every Sunday morning you march right up into my house in my face driving cars that you drove with stolen money. You're wearing clothes that you purchased with stolen money. The shoes that brought you here is with stolen money. Right in my face, you are cursed with a curse. The danger of disobedience, the grace of giving. I see the grace of giving is based on your position in your return. The grace of giving is based on the privilege of bringing all the tithes into the storehouse. I see the grace of giving is based on purpose, that there may be meat, that there may be meat in my house. The outcome of obedience. God promises to reward our faith. I will open, I will make room, I will give you enough that there's not room enough. God promises to rebuke the foul. He promised to rebuke our enemies. I said He promises. God promises a renew of our faithfulness. All nations, delightful land. Israel, there are two different bodies of water, but they have the same water supply. Let's look at that a little bit. The Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. Actually, in Mount Hermon, which is the snow crab, when the snow begins to melt on Mount Hermon, it rushes violently down Mount Hermon into the northern inlet of the Jordan River. And then it flows straight through the Jordan River, out through the southern outlet of the Jordan into the northern outlet of the Sea of Galilee. That same water keeps flowing from the Sea of Galilee out of its southern outlet into the northern outlet of the Dead Sea. But once it gets to the Dead Sea, there's a strain, a stagnant, because the Dead Sea has no southern outlet. The Dead Sea has a northern outlet, but no southern outlet. And so the same water that flows into the Jordan and out of the Jordan into the Sea of Galilee and out of the Sea of Galilee into the Dead Sea and releases, and therefore it grows and flows there. But the Dead Sea, in receptive mentality, has no release. It takes in, but does not let anything go. And that's why it's dead. I'm trying to bring this up because one more like that. There's two different Christians that are here, of course. There's two different Christians. You get your blessings from the same supply, the same source. Because according to James 1, every good and perfect gift comes from above, from the Lord our God, who is our maker, sustainer, he's our savior and redeemer. Now how can one Christian's life be rich and refreshing with things growing and flowing, and the other Christian getting their blessings and good gifts from the same sovereign source, but their life is dead and meaningless, where nothing is flowing and nothing is growing? Why? Because if you have a receptive mentality, there's no release. If all you want to do is receive, all you want to do is get God's blessings, but you do not release God's blessings. I don't care how long you've been coming to church. I don't care how much time you're paying. If you're not giving, if you're not releasing, I don't care how big your Bible is, or how cute you look when you come to church. Things will not work. They will not flow. They will not function. And they will not grow in your life. Why? Because whatever God sends through a person, last, God will send it to that person first. Why? Because if God cannot send it through you, God won't waste his time sending it to you. I want you to get this. I want you to get this. When God meeting your needs, he's really on his way meeting somebody else's needs. A lot of times when God blesses you, he's really on his way to bless somebody else. The operating modus of God's word is this way. He's sending it to you, hoping that you can challenge it through you to bless somebody else that he's trying to touch. But when you stop the flow of God, what God is doing for you, then God stops sending it your way. As Christian believers, we don't like our lives to be the way of the world. We're not supposed to live like the world. We don't have the same mentality as the world do. We don't think the same way. This is the way you get God's flow. This is the way God will use you. This is the way God will grow in you. And it is the connection of fundamental theological biblical truth that here God's glory is connected to your giving. If you give, God will bless you. You're not supposed to get in and just stand there. When God blesses you, you're supposed to bless somebody else. That's why he said, bring all your tithes to the storehouse, that they may be meat in my house. He didn't say keep it, because if you keep it, he'll find a way to use it. He'll find a way to take it from you. Turn from your wicked ways. This was not supposed to be a sermon to make you jump and shout. It's a sermon to make you think what God is doing for you. Are you taking what God is giving you and not sharing it?